I was in office. I didn't do enough for Africa. I didn't do enough to support leaders like you, Obama admitted, his voice low but sincere. We always spoke about Africa's potential, but when it came time to act, when it came to truly empowering African nations to make their own decisions, I stayed silent. I didn't take the risks that needed to be taken. President Ibrahim Traoré sat in quiet reflection, carefully absorbing the weight of Obama's words. It was a rare and unexpected moment. A Western leader openly acknowledging past failures, not in front of cameras, but face-to-face, in truth. Despite their political differences, Ibrahim couldn't help but feel a measure of respect for the former U.S. president's honesty. I should have done more, Obama continued, his voice growing firmer. I should have seen the strength in African leadership. I should have stood behind you, and others like you, when the world tried to silence you. Instead, I allowed the West to continue pulling the strings, and for that, I'm sorry. Ibrahim inhaled deeply, his thoughts racing. He had once viewed Obama as a symbol of hope, a beacon during uncertain times. But these words added a new dimension to that image. Obama's apology wasn't only personal. It was an admission of a much bigger truth: the West's continued interference in African affairs and the pressure that African leaders constantly faced from foreign powers. I appreciate your words, Mr. Obama, Ibrahim replied, his tone steady and reflective. But Africa's fight for sovereignty can't be reduced to apologies alone. What we need is action. For too long, this continent has been exploited, controlled, and manipulated. That must end. Obama nodded solemnly, clearly moved by the truth of Ibrahim's words. You're right, and that's why I asked to meet with you. Africa can't afford to wait for permission to rise. You've shown, through your leadership, that it's possible to stand up to those who've held Africa back. That's something I deeply respect. For a moment, silence fell between the two men, thick with the gravity of what was being said. Ibrahim reflected not only on Obama's words, but on what they represented. Africa's future had always depended on the strength of its people and its leaders. But now he understood something more. Part of that future would also rely on whether global powers could admit their wrongs and step aside, allowing Africa to choose its own path. I'm not interested in looking back, Ibrahim said finally. What matters is where we go from here. Africa must stand on its own. We will no longer wait for permission or validation. We will build our future with our own hands, based on our own values, not those imposed upon us. Obama smiled, a mix of regret and admiration in his eyes. I agree. Africa's future lies with leaders like you. You're paving a new road, a road that doesn't depend on the West's approval, but on the strength and unity of Africa itself. As their conversation continued, the two leaders spoke of many things: Africa's vast potential, the urgent need for continental unity, and the deep-rooted challenges that stood in the way. Obama shared his perspective on the global power structure, the ways in which the West had misunderstood and misrepresented Africa, and the changes that must occur. Ibrahim listened intently, asking questions, offering insights, and laying out his vision for a free and self-determined Africa. But one thought lingered in his mind. For Africa to truly rise, it wasn't just the world's perception that had to change. It was Africa's own perception of itself. The real transformation would begin when African nations stopped viewing themselves through a Western lens and began to believe in their own strength, culture, and potential. I hope, Ibrahim said near the end of their exchange, that the lessons of the past can help us build a better future. But that future must be led by Africa. We cannot wait for others to fix our problems. We will fix them ourselves. Obama stood and extended his hand, a gesture of mutual respect and solidarity. I believe you will, and I'll support you however I can. As they shook hands, the weight of their conversation lingered in the air. Ibrahim knew the road ahead would not be easy. The path toward true independence and unity was filled with obstacles. But one thing had become clear. Africa was no longer asleep. The silence that once hung over the continent was being replaced by voices of courage, pride, and determination. And those voices would no longer be ignored. For the world to see, he had made it clear. No foreign power would ever again control Africa's destiny. With his words, Ibrahim Traoré had sparked something powerful in the hearts of the African people. They had waited for a leader who would rise against the old systems of exploitation and corruption, a leader who would fight for Africa's sovereignty and give them the voice they had long been denied. Now, in Ibrahim, they had found that leader. News of Ibrahim Traoré's bold defiance against the African Union spread like wildfire across the continent. In Burkina Faso, the people were electrified. They saw their president not only standing up for their country, but also challenging the corrupt elites who had, for decades, held Africa in chains. The streets of Ouagadougou echoed with chants of support. Ibrahim had become more than a president. He had become a symbol of resistance, a leader unafraid to expose the truth and confront the broken systems that had long failed the people. But not everyone shared this vision. In Ivory Coast, President Alassane Ouattara and his allies were outraged. They saw Ibrahim's rejection of the African Union's decision as a direct affront to their authority. Ouattara, widely regarded as a staunch supporter of Western interests, feared the rise of leaders like Ibrahim who dared to reject the status quo. He knew that if Ibrahim's influence continued to spread, it could ignite a revolutionary wave across Africa, one that would threaten regimes built on foreign control and internal corruption. In Nigeria, the situation mirrored that concern. President Bola Tinubu, another leader with deep ties to Western powers, viewed Ibrahim's ascent with unease. The youth in Nigeria were already raising their voices against political corruption, and Ibrahim's leadership had become a beacon of hope for those longing for real change. Tinubu feared that Ibrahim's growing popularity might inspire similar movements at home, mass protests, civil unrest, and possibly the collapse of a fragile political order. Yet in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim remained resolute. His dismissal of the African Union's condemnation had sent shockwaves through political circles, but it had also cemented his role as the people's leader. This was not just about preserving his presidency, it was about defending the right of African nations to govern themselves, free from the grip of foreign interference and corrupt elites. Despite the groundswell of support, Ibrahim was no stranger to the forces working against him. The African Union's threats to suspend or expel him were just the beginning. He understood the political chess game at play. Burkina Faso's success under his leadership had made it a target, and those who feared his revolutionary ideals would stop at nothing to undermine him. But Ibrahim stood firm. His message was unwavering. No African leader should bow to the West or to any power seeking to exploit the continent. In a public address that would echo across Africa, he spoke with strength and conviction. They want to silence us. They want to drag us back into the shadows of corruption and exploitation. But we are not afraid. We will not go back. The time for change is now. The time has come for Africa to speak for itself. We will rise, and we will stand together. The response was overwhelming. Applause erupted across the capital. His boldness had not only won the hearts of the Burkinabe people, it had inspired millions of Africans who were disillusioned with the old systems of governance. From Senegal to Cameroon, from Ghana to South Africa, young people began to rally behind him. They saw in Ibrahim a new hope, a leader who could redefine African politics and liberate the continent from the chains of dependency and manipulation. Sensing the shifting tide, the African Union attempted to backpedal, but it was too late. The truth was out. The AU, once a symbol of continental unity, had been exposed as a tool of control, corrupted from within by leaders like Ouattara and Tinubu, who prioritized their power and foreign alliances over the well-being of their people. Ibrahim's defiance had pulled back the curtain. The people could now see clearly the hypocrisy that infected the very institutions meant to serve them. Still, while many Africans celebrated his courage, the battle was far from over. The West, led by France and other European powers, was watching closely. They had deep-rooted interests in Africa, resources, influence, and control, and Ibrahim's anti-corruption stance and rejection of Western dominance posed a serious threat. Behind closed doors, plans were already in motion. Discussions were underway on how to contain or remove the young leader who dared to challenge centuries of exploitation. But Ibrahim was no fool. He knew what he was up against. These forces would not go down without a fight, and neither would he.